160,000 pages of federal rules facing us. Even liberal politicians now occasionally talk about reducing regulation.
That's why we're getting rid of regulations that don't work.
That would be good if true, but they've barely eliminated anything. And for every rule they repeal, they pass a dozen new ones. Some of their regulators just step on people. I recently reported on this family who did nothing wrong. They got a legal permit to build a house, but then they were bankrupted by EPA bureaucrats who basically made up their own rules. And recently we got a taste of that mentality when this EPA official was caught being unusually candid about his enforcement strategy. He compared it to the Romans conquering villages. You crucify the first 5 guys you find, then that town is easy to manage. Is this really bureaucrats' attitude? One person who should know is Douglas Holtz-Eakin. He used to head the Congressional Budget Office. The CBO is the agency in charge of reporting what laws will cost us. Douglas, is this really their attitude? Some of their attitude?
Obviously, in some cases, it is. We saw that EPA official actually step down from his position because of the backlash against a strategy that was clearly one meant to intimidate, not to serve the public good. And there are times when the implementation just flat goes out over the line, and there are times when the regulations themselves simply don't make any sense. I was listening to your show earlier, and one of your guests made the point that this is just like tax and spend, only in disguise. And in this environment, one where we have huge budget deficits, the risks of trying to do this in disguise get bigger and bigger.
And we have some new weird regulations that your regulation rodeo is looking at. The Justice Department has now decreed that miniature horses must be allowed in stores. And if you say, no horses, please, they can't toilet train them, you could be in trouble.
Hard to believe. So saddle up. It's the classic case of well-intentioned regulation. You want to make sure that the disabled have access to the same places as those of us who have complete function. But the question is, what's next? I mean, if it's going to be miniature horses, what are we going to have pulling the disabled next? And so, this is an extremely difficult place to put a store owner, and it tramples on their ability to run their business as they see fit. So this is a question of whether one regulation is just going to spawn a million more. So now you say, okay, these are qualified horses. How do you know they're qualified? What's the certification? What's going to be the display? Are they going to have to wear a sign? Are they going to have a barcode? How does this end? And pretty soon the regulation is going to multiply and explode.
Another one in Florida. I saw a picture of a vending machine that had this odd sign on it. What's that about?
This is my favorite. Next to the vending machine there's a sign. You have a telephone number on it, and it says, by law, this vending machine has to have this sign next to it. If it's not, please call this number, which does raise the question how you know the number if the sign's not there. So that's a highly productive regulation doing what exactly? I have no idea.
And we checked it out. The sign has no purpose other than just to say you got to have that sign in Florida. And they're not embarrassed. I thought they'd be embarrassed and say, oh, it was a mistake.
They should be embarrassed because the companies that provide vending machines are typically our small businesses, and they're the subject of an enormous number of regulations. The new health care law gives them labeling regulations that say, this is what's in this food. I know what I'm getting when I go to the vending machine, and some of those are my favorite restaurants.
Now, the President said some encouraging things in his recent State of the Union messages. He talked about getting rid of some rules. He said we got rid of one rule that classified a spill of milk like an oil spill, required a hazmat team or something to clean it up. And they got rid of that. Good. But that rule was in existence for 40 years. And the other one he cited, 12 different agencies deal with exports. My favorite example, the Interior Department is in charge of salmon and freshwater. The Commerce Department in saltwater. I hear it gets even more complicated once they're smoked. And everybody laughs and there's applause. But they still haven't gotten rid of that craziness.
These regulations almost never go away, and even if they do, and congratulations that our dairy farmers no longer have to wear hazmat suits to clean up a spill. I mean, that's a huge moment in American history, but we're still spewing out new regulations at an astonishing pace, and the net burden is rising, not falling. And some of the new ones will make as little sense as the old ones. There's one now where, as usual, it's in the energy space, and it's clean energy, and it was a new kind of ethanol, cellulosic ethanol, and a couple years back everyone was hot on its future, and so we mandated its use. The trouble is it doesn't exist. So now we have a mandate to use a product that doesn't exist. That's a regulation that should go away fast. Maybe the president could work on that one.
Thank you, Douglas Holtz-Eakin.